recording, I guess, banter, even though we are recording.
It's intro.
Yeah, that's what ends up there. So, all right. Self-advocacy was the topic of a previous episode, not a previous, the previous.
Sit back, so my face isn't that big.
Okay. I have the camera fully zoomed out and my face is still big. So, and Bob had a really good idea about telling the story of Richard educating me on what a great Scrum Master looks like and the value that they create. Because in the previous world, I didn't spend money on it because I just did it myself. So that's the framing. So I think, Bob, it seems like you're the driver on this one. That probably makes you uncomfortable because it would require you to spend some more time talking.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that, Josh. I'm so shy. No, I mean, the setup for me is what you said. So in past Metacasts, so when we started, Josh was an Agilist, and there were most things we agreed on, but one things we butted heads on years ago. This was in the beginning. Was I saw value in Scrum Masters, like just inherent value in hiring them, even if you had budget constraints. So this notion of a part-time Scrum Master, I think I had gone there and I'm like, no, it's a serious role, but it has to be done seriously. And Josh didn't buy that. So we had some friction in that area. And then there was a pivot, and still many years ago, but I remember the conversation we had with Metacasters. There was a pivot where Josh was like, I get it. And the instigation for that was Richard, whether he knew it or not, whatever he
No
did.
clue.
But that was the instigation. And Josh was like, you know what? I've seen a Scrum Master and it pivoted me. I saw value. And I get it. And I don't just get it for Richard, but I get it in general. And then he really apologized to me. Tears were coming down Josh's face. And he said, Bob, I'm sorry. Oh, you were right all along.
So that didn't happen. That is inaccurate.
And I graciously accepted his apology.
You've never graciously accepted any apology from me.
Yeah. So going back to this advocacy, that's what I wanted. I'm really excited. I'm going to step back, but I want to hear between Josh and Richard what happened, because I think that pivot, that epiphany doesn't happen very frequently. And I'd want to hear Josh talking about what went on in his head, and what was Richard doing? Was it intentional? Was it unintentional, etc.? So Metacasters, I think that's some additional framing.
Okay, I'll set the stage for where my brain was walking in to Dude Solutions. You guys have heard about that many a time, and so this is the story of what happened there. Prior to that, I had been in companies where it was the Scrum Master and role. So they were Scrum Master and QA, Scrum Master and Dev. And I never saw the value in distracting a member of the squad with Scrum Master roles, efforts, and all of that. So I just kind of did it, and it worked. Admittedly, it was spread across a handful of teams, so it wasn't overbearing, but I just said, listen, you don't worry about this. I'll take care of that, because we're going to do better if you focus on the thing you're really good at. So then I got into hired. Geez, I'm like adding extra words today. Then I got hired at Dude Solutions, and there were two people that were already on board. They were previous employees, and one was Richard, who had been designated as the Scrum Master. I'm not sure if you ever played that role before. You can explain. And then Brent Pabst, who was the architect. So architect, I'm like, okay, we're building a thing from scratch. I can get it. Is this guy really an architect, or is he just like someone that they threw out and said, hey, you have an architect? And then the Scrum Master role, I thought, oh boy, what am I going to do with this? What if this doesn't work out? Like they've said, Richard's Richard's a dude and he's staying here forever, so you got to make it work. And I never met Richard. I had no idea, right? I'm walking in blind. I'm like walking in, and this poor guy's in a role that I don't believe in, and which already puts him in a tough spot. He didn't know it. I never told him. At least I don't think I did. And so then that's how the party got started. But as Bob mentioned, over time, that light bulb went off, and I never wanted to travel without Scrum Masters like Richard. So that's the setting. Richard, the floor is yours for wherever you want to go with it.
So I'll take it from a perspective of how it all started, right? So have I done the Scrum Master role before? The answer is no. Now, I've been in roles where I was leading teams, I was helping with process and things like that. So a lot of kind of what a coach and Scrum Master is supposed to be doing, but I wasn't called that. So, I was, flying into India, Malaysia. I was helping them with, bringing teams up, kicking off teams, right? Setting them on the path, and then, planning for them, right? Things like that. So what happened was that Dude Solutions decided that, hey, what they were using, traditional project management, wasn't working. It was taking too long. So, hey, Richard, by the way, it sounds like you have done this before. I did something like that before, back in an older organization. It failed miserably. I didn't know what I was doing. I was reading a book. So I did daily stand-up. People hated me for that, right? So because of that, they say, hey, Richard, you've done some Agile before. We would like for you to go do this. And I was like, okay, I can. So I kind of lay out some stuff that you need to do. One was making sure management understand what Agile is. And that's kind of why Bob Gillen was brought in as part of the consulting side of it. Long story short, it was more like, here's yours, go run with it, right? And they had put me on the day that I said, yes, I will take the role. It was on a Friday, and the class for CSM certificate starts on Monday. My senior VP had already signed me up even before I said yes. So I was like, my first instinct, this is not good. I wanted Mike Cohen. Why would I want to learn from somebody I don't know? I wanted the best, right? And luckily, I got the right person. Peter Saddington is really good at what he does. So I was just lucky to have him at that point in time. So he gave me a lot of, in that 2 days, a lot of learning stuff. Most of the stuff is like, it's kind of, for me, it was instinct because I've done some of the stuff before. So when I met Josh did let me know that he doesn't want a Scrum Master.
Oh, no.
Now, not directly. I remember having a conversation where Josh like, we're not going to go do Scrum. Probably Kanban is the way to go. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen now? I remember coming home telling my wife that I'm done. So I'm not sure if you remember, Josh, I was part of the interviewing group that interviewed you as well.
Yeah. Yep.
So I just told my wife, I've just hired that somebody's going to can me. All right. But again, I was so naive. There was no intention whatsoever to say, I'm going to prove to Josh. There was no such intention. I was like, I was going to go do my job. That's it. I was going to help the team. Here's what I'm supposed to go do. And that was it. I just went and did it. So looking back, no, I didn't do it on purpose. Do I know what I was doing? Probably not. Right? I just went with my gut, say, here's what the right thing to do. Now, Josh did allow me to learn. The time I spent working with Josh allowed me to grow so much that it's just phenomenal in my mind, right? For that short period of time.
Yeah, I had to get to a point where I felt like I had to give you everything you needed to succeed, and hopefully you prove to be that person, because I was uncomfortable and have always been uncomfortable, just like saying, hey, this isn't a fit, it's not going to work, when we haven't created the opportunity for someone to succeed, provide clarity. Now, at that time, I don't think I did a good enough job with clarity for you on what that was, because I wasn't totally sure about the role at that point. But you did a really good job of helping clarify it, which helped. And that's something that I think people out there can do, is that if the person you're working with /for doesn't provide you with clear expectations, that's an opportunity to define them and shape them. And Richard, whether he did it or not on purpose, that became part of what Richard was doing. And that, as we decided to hire another person, like a peer to Richard, Richard became the model of, okay, this is what works for us. This is what we're looking for. And Richard didn't wait for me to say, hey, you should be this. He just kind of did his thing, which was great. Was there any point along the way where that fear of me saying, okay, Richard, this isn't going to work, where that like increased after that initial scare?
No, actually, no. I was so, I would say, dumb enough not to think about it. I was just charging ahead, and I think, looking back, is that pair, right? Is, yeah, if I'm working for somebody that doesn't see the value, does that person allow me to grow, allow me to do what I need to do? Now, years has passed. I've been in situation where that's not the case. I don't have that person. They don't believe in the value, and they continue to not believe in that value. So in this instance, for me, it's like, I'm not gonna go to places where they don't value me, because it's just a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Right. So I can't help the team unless they feel like, there is some value, then yeah. But if there is a mismatch in expectation, I think there's a disaster in the making. Nobody's gonna be happy. I'm not happy. The client's happy. We just not the point, right?
But there was a mismatch in expectations for us, right? Like when we started.
Yeah. But
Was there?
you had a mindset of allowing me to grow.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you didn't just say, you don't make my expectation go away. You didn't say that. You didn't do that. Now, you may be thinking about it, but you were like, you know what? I'm going to take some time and get a feel of it.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
I remember a discussion, and I'm surprised my memory, I can't remember anything, but I remember talking to you. It wasn't something Richard did. It was an observation you made. So I think it relates to what you guys are saying. You gave him some space, but you were watching. You were paying attention. You weren't micromanaging, but you were paying attention. And I remember in the first Metacast, you came back and it was like, wow, this guy, and it wasn't the Scrum Master stuff that wowed you. It was the leadership stuff. It was the cultural stuff. It was the intangibles. It wasn't running a stand-up or facilitating a retrospective. All of those Richard could do. But, and I'm just trying to jog your memory, but you observed, it was like, I forget how you said it, but it was like, holy crap. Richard was like a mini me. I couldn't be everywhere. Richard was there on the front lines with me, and that has incredible value to me as a leader, because now he's my partner in transitioning. Does that bring back any?
That's 100% where I saw what a great Scrum Master could be. And we worked very hard at the Dude to create areas of focus for leaders across the board and to really own it. And Richard and the other Agile coach that we hired owned Agile for us. And it wasn't just big A, it was the little a pieces as well, because the big A stuff, just, they're good, it happens. And like, you don't like, that's not really the issue. I think a lot of people can do those. They might not do it well, but they can do that part. But what Richard was able to do was carry the core values of who we wanted our teams to be into every interaction. And he played a huge role in helping create the culture that was so successful there, because no one could have been in all of the places. But I got to a point where I knew if Richard was there or one of his peers were there, we had a really tight peer group there, that I knew things were going to be okay. And we spent a lot of time as that peer group kind of figuring out who we wanted to be. And the most valuable piece of Richard that he gave to me was his just willingness to call me out and say, like, Josh, we don't have that problem. You need to stop. Like, stop trying to solve things that we don't need to solve. And if you know Richard, that's Richard's style, right? He's just, it's right there. He sees it. He knows it has to be said, and he says it. And that became why a huge reason why Richard was so trusted by me, because I knew I was getting the 100% honest truth, even if he knew it was going to burn like crap when I heard it. But I knew Richard cared, and he cared enough to give me the facts. And without Richard and his ability in that part of the world, I don't think we would have become the company that we became, the department that we came, because that's a standard that he set that then became a culture within our leadership group. And so those were the things that just gave us the opportunity to really be as great as we could be.
Well, thank you. I think for me, living through that, the other side of it, the darker side of it is pretty much, it was, constantly feeling like I was nagging almost.
Yeah.
And it become a mantra for me. What problem are we solving? And every time it's like, that's Richard. That's his call, right? And he always asks that question.
Yeah.
So
but that's what has to happen. And not only did it become a thing within our leadership group, it became a part of the culture within the organization where people were doing it inside of those squads. And that again has shaped how I build teams, in that it's so important that we try and create an environment where people are willing and actively speak up like that, even though it might feel like you're being annoying. It really is the right thing to do. And Richard I never saw him back down from it, which was huge for us. So even in the face of, gosh, what's this guy going to do? Is he going to fire me? Richard was still willing to be like, no, dude, you're crazy.
But it's till today is what we call psychological safety, right? I feel safe enough to make those calls. I feel safe enough to bring it up, and I think that is something that is key important in shaping what I do today. Is, do we have that? Do we have people? I remember somebody saying, "Hey, that's not we suck." Remember you were experimenting with how are we gonna give goals, and what was it, performance bonus or something like that. And one individual that stood up said, "No, everybody says good, but we suck," and that was the safety. I mean, they feel safe enough to make that call.
Yeah.
Right, to be able to stand up among like 40 people and say that. So I think that's one important thing.
That's a good call out. I think Josh engenders that safety. So there's this combination, Metacasters, that we're exposing between Josh and Richard. I want to point out that this isn't just a love fest for Josh or a love fest for Richard. It is, but this is a model that I would say anyone who's in a coaching or a Scrum Master role needs to be paying attention to this episode, because these are the intangibles. Even if you're loved, even if your leader is saying, "Oh, I love you as a Scrum Master," they can say that to your face, and that's fine. They may mean that, but is it really resonating? So Josh would have said that after beers or whiskey at a bar. He said, "Richard, he's got my value and I have his back." This is this reciprocal relationship that you need to establish. It's a value proposition. And how do you establish that value proposition? And how do you establish the relationship? Guys, I want you to talk a little bit about alignment. Josh, you were talking about aligning with that team. Was it intentional? Was it unintentional? You guys were aligning. There was some intentionality around getting ourselves aligned on principles. Talk more about that, both of you.
From my perspective, it was Richard and I, we fell into a unique opportunity where we had the chance to build the team, the product, and the process from scratch in a very well-funded company, which is super exciting, but also a little bit scary, because I walked in with all of these ideas of how we could do it. And that was very different from how I had done it in previous places where I didn't have the choice to call the shots. And so now that it was like, hey, we're calling the shots, that's exciting, but also like, holy shit, like there's no one else. Like you can't say, oh, so-and-so said we were doing it like this. It was now we are in this together and we have to figure it out. So it was maybe not intentionally, but it was a cry for help for me to say, hey, I'm not sure I can do this by myself. Let me find people I can work with. And then together we can get to that final answer, which, you know, made me feel Richard, like, why the heck did we hire this guy? Like he's coming in and he's immediately asking for help. Like what the hell's going on here? So that's the view from my angle.
Yeah. So that, you know, creating a team where everybody have a say, because we're co-creation. So you came in, you co-created something with the group that's there, right? Well, for me, it was, you know, here's Josh. You know, so from my end, it was an opportunity to put together a group of team together to build something great. Yeah, even though I was a Scrum Master, right? But I was early on being asked to say, "Hey, Richard, you've done some of this. What are the gotchas? What do we need to do?" Right? And that's when, okay, well, we need to make sure management's aligned. That's, you know, we need this. We need somebody that has agile experience before. You know, a QA person that has agile experience before. You know, who do we bring in? And I was part of that co-creation of that team. And I think that, you know, a sense of that, I don't know, autonomy, ownership,
Yep.
was part of that, I guess. And then it was fun for me.
Stephen Kellogg asked a question. I'm not sure I understand it, but I don't know if you see it, both of you guys. He's talking about management peers culture and enabled him to learn. So having Richard talk to that.
Yeah,
Richard, do you understand that question?
No, I do not.
I don't. Stephen, you got to try us again, buddy.
You got to try it again, Stephen.
You have to break it down. You know, like give us a for dummies version, and then we'll probably be able to handle it.
Are you counting me twice, Josh?
No, just you know. So in the meantime, while Stephen knocks that out, because I know that he will. How confident were you in the role that had already been predetermined for you, as you found out on day one? And then what were the things that allowed you to become more confident over time? Again, as we're talking to Scrum Masters out there, like what's the journey you had there to help them hopefully make the same journey you did?
Yeah. So for me is one, I know what I don't know. So two is I always go find out what I don't know and get a lot, you know, as much help as I can. So what I did learn was, again, kudos back to Peter Seddington. He has an awesome 2-day class that I attended. He gave me a lot of stuff from that, and I'm walking in, and a lot of books. I was reading a lot of books. Some of the theories and practices align with what I've done before. So my background was I've been, you know, software engineer, architect, manager, you know, director of software development. I was building teams and stuff like that, and I went into process role. Right? It's like, I can't get this product to go out the door the way I want it. What's wrong with it? Right? So it's like, oh, it's a process side. So I did process for a little bit, and then it's like, you know what? Truly, it's the people. Right? So it kind of the 3 Ps, right? The product, people, process side of it. I kind of had that opportunity to do that, and I was just going for it. I actually just, you know, did it. I remember talking to you, Josh. It was like, we're gonna go Scrum, and I was like, no, if we do Scrum by the book, right? And I was like, we're gonna do that. Looking back, did we do it by the book? Probably not. Which is what Bob called us out on. Bob's like, you guys are probably not doing it right.
Bob would never do that.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation, right? I remember Bob coming in where it's like, you know, I don't think Richard's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Did I really say that? I have no recollection of that event.
I am willing to bet that you said that preference or with a prefix of I don't mean to pick, but
that's right.
Richard's not doing his job.
Thank you, Josh. It's true. I wanted to talk a little bit to the Metacasters too, that this is, I want to point out, I've been a part of a handful of high performance agile organizations in my life. as a consultant and as an insider, as a leader and as a coach, eye contact is one of them. And I'm not saying perfect organizations, but eye contact was one that I'm very proud of. From an outsider point of view, I was very proud of what Josh and Richard and others did at the Dude Solutions. Was it a prototype? They were doing Spotify stuff. So was it by the book? No, but the spirit of it. So Metacasters, I want you to be listening to this because I think there's a secret sauce aspect that's coming across. There's secret sauce from Josh as a leader, listening, psychological safety. There's a secret sauce from what Richard was doing. And he was bold. He was courageous. He would ask the team. I've observed Richard. He's not stuck in his ego. He would listen to his team. He would always engage his team. He is insatiable. He might not admit this, but I think he's insatiably curious. And he's a learner. And that's incredibly helpful as a characteristic to this day. And he gives back to the community. So he's active in the Agile community. He's trying to learn things and collaborate. So there's some secret sauce elements that you should take away and consider, are you doing them? Guys, maybe play off of that a little bit. Like if we could give folks a toolkit. I'm trying to think of giving folks a toolkit from this episode. Not a toolkit, but you know what I mean.
When I look for Scrum Masters, again, it starts from the Richard mold. And it is that boldness that he has when he knows something, but also that capability to say, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. Right? Like those are two pieces that I could always count on Richard having the confidence that he knew something. And we actually built that into the hiring process of like, how do we find out how somebody is really confident in what they know? So that helped shape the way that we hired. The other thing was Richard could have a conversation with anybody within the squad about their poor performance, their lack of engagement, their whatever. And while Richard could be intimidating at times, it never came off as that. Like I never heard anybody come back like, oh my God, Richard just destroyed me. It was like, hey, I had a good conversation with Richard, and he would always like, he's a super smart guy. He would like go have it outside in the chairs in the shade. He'd be leaning back with his legs crossed, just kind of hanging out with a person, you know? And so he was really good at that. So those are the three things that Richard showed me, again, that he taught me of, this is how you do this role really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think outside looking in is very different, right? What you guys saw and what, for me from the inside look, going out is very different, right? I felt I was inadequate. I felt like, I was doing the wrong thing. I made a lot of mistakes, saying the wrong things, stepping on my toes, right? But a lot of it, I think, going back to just curious, just wanting to be better at what I do. I think remember reaching out to Bob Galen, the ALN, and saying, hey, I'm a new Scrum Master. I would like to learn from others like me, but there is no other people like me or no other people around me in Dude Solutions. And I look at Red Hat, and they had a big group of community there. And I said, that's unfair. All right. So, and then reach out to Bob, said, Bob, there's Colorado, there's a group out there. Right, they got a Scrum Master Focus group going, and then there's one in Florida at the time. It was only two, and I said, could I do something like that? The goal was, could I learn from others? Could I create something that will help bring people together? And then selfishly, basically, could I learn from them? So there was the intention behind it, right?
Yeah, that was a big step for us when you started that Scrum Master Focus group, and we started a host. Because that then grew into, we started a product owner focus group because Pamela was the same, like, oh, wait a minute, look what's happening over there. Like, I would like to learn like that. So it again was that boldness for Richard to say like, okay, this doesn't exist. I'm going to go make it happen. And Richard, if you know him long enough, if you have worked with him long enough, there's going to be times where he puts his foot straight in his mouth. But that's Richard, and I value, again, the boldness of Richard to say what needs to be said. There have been times in the past where he said what needed to be said. Maybe the wording could have been a little bit better,
Yeah.
but it needed to be said. And so that's someone that I'm always going to give space to because the value is so tremendous. And like nobody's perfect. Everybody, like Richard was there when I've put my foot in my mouth a handful of times. And like one time I even got called into HR for it, So, it's, we all struggle with that, but there was never a moment in my time there where I thought like, okay, this isn't going to work out. So can you talk about those feelings throughout your path as the Scrum Master? Because so many everybody struggles with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
All of us do. Everyone does. And it sounds like that's what you were wrestling with. Did it ever go away, or was it always there no matter what you did?
Yeah, it's always there. I mean, so to me, it's going back to Suhari, right? Early on, I don't know what I don't know. So you feel really, I know everything. The
Yeah.
more I know, the more I realize that the more I don't know. Right. And that's the path, is that there was a lot of stuff, going back to as a coach, right? How many areas of coach that we, the skills that we need to have. Do I have all of this? No. Do I have some that I am pretty good at? Yes. Right. So that's the, how do I compare to other coaches? What areas should I seek to be better? And that's one of the things that, working with Josh, I learned that, again, it's not focus on the negative stuff, focus on my strength. What is it that I'm good at? Right? What is my superpower strength? What is that? And then, going back to today, self-advocacy. Well, when you brought it up to me, it's like, I don't know. This is not a natural thing for me. One, I'm Asian, I'm Chinese. So it's not in our nature to, in my mind, boast about ourselves. But along the way, I did learn that I have to sometimes sell myself. And that's key. YouTube for me is something that I went into because Peter Sennington did it. I thought it was fun. I jumped along, not knowing what I was doing, right? And then, I remember Josh calling me out on this. It's like, why are you aspiring to be an agile coach? Why are you aspiring to be a YouTuber? You are, right? Call it like it is. You are, right? And that's kind of set my mind that yes, I am a YouTuber. I am an agilist. I am an agile coach. That gave me the confidence to move forward with it. So a lot of those things helped me along the way. I don't know. Sometimes I ramble, so I think I'm rambling at this point.
Yeah, well, that's another thing that I struggle with. I don't think Bob has ever had that thought. I don't think he's ever thought, "Hey, I'm rambling."
No, I never I mean, I talk a lot, but it's
I remember now.
Yeah, but it's always incredibly insightful. So at least to me.
What I was going with is YouTube actually. So YouTube actually allowed me. It set me up for other gigs. We call it gigs, right? Other places to work from, and people hire me because of that. So which is interesting to see.
Josh, I'm going to call you out to see how you react, but it sounds like back then, and this is in the history, but maybe you should have done a better job, because I know you were enamored with Richard, and maybe you weren't communicating that to him enough. I don't know, right? From a valuation perspective, you were seeing the value.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about it multiple times in Metacast. I know that.
Yeah.
So you saw it, but there's this, so from a leadership point of view, there's this reciprocal, I think, valuation synchronization that has to happen from a leader or a sponsor or a stakeholder, communicating, I'm either not seeing the value or I am seeing the value. And then I think it's like from Richard's point of view, checking in with you, and maybe you guys, you had it, but it wasn't synced up very well. That could have maybe been smoother. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a struggle that I've had, that actually I discovered I had when I was working with Richard, and I've, over the past decade plus since we worked together, maybe not plus, around a decade, I've been working very hard on, because I know my personality is, I don't take time to celebrate the victories because like that's done, and I actually want to highlight the things that aren't working because that's how we get even better.
Yeah.
And that works in my brain. What I was smacked in the face with is like almost everybody else on your team probably doesn't work like that. So you're doing them a disservice and causing them to get down because you don't ever stop and say like, yeah, that was freaking awesome. Even though like in your mind, you're like, yeah, but okay, let's move on. Let's find the thing that's broken and fix it so we can be even more awesome. And I was horrible at that. And so along the way, I've really worked at doing that. So I am sure part of the imposter syndrome that Richard wrestled with was because I wasn't good at that yet. I think I'm okay now, but I was really bad at it back then. So I can imagine it being difficult of really having clarity, especially when you're doing well, because historically when you're doing well, I spend less time thinking about you because like, hey, Richard has it, so that probably puts you in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Like, am I good or am I not? Like, he's not talking to me as much as he used to. And, unintentionally, it was because you were crushing it, but you had no clue, which can create fear and confusion.
Yeah, I think so. From my end, actually, one of the things I learned is that I no longer, I would say, I no longer rely on that value evaluation from high ups. I kind of self-value myself where I'm at. So for me, it's like it's important for me to be able to do what I do, feel comfortable with what I do, be happy with what I do, and to me, it wasn't so. No news is good news, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you were not checking on me all the time. And I was like, you know what? I get it. I get the freedom to do what I need to do, and I feel comfortable with it. Um, would it have been better if we provided more feedback? I think you did enough. It wasn't over. So for me, it was enough for me to go do what I need to do, right? So I felt good. I felt, really well received. I really felt valued at that point. We had lots of good conversations. And did we make mistakes? Absolutely. I think one of the things, the secret sauce to today of getting teams to Agile isn't any framework. It's what we did. It's basically we were doing what Agile Manifesto, the first thing that they say to it, which is we're learning it, we're doing it, and then helping others do it. And this is exactly what we did at Deep Solutions. We didn't say we're going to go do X. We just say what part of X can we pull from? And we Spotify. We didn't do everything in Spotify. We had a conversation with Spotify. We learned early on that even themselves they didn't have a iron out plan. Some were doing this way, some were doing the other way. All right. So I think that to me was able to pull pieces apart and kind of fit what problem we're trying to fix.
Yeah, and that like I remember the moment when you said, Josh, I think we're really we're really a manifesto driven organization. Like that's what's driving the changes we do or don't make. And so I never thought of it like that, but you crystallized it for me that then now that allowed us as that leadership group to just kind of use that as a benchmark. Like, okay, are we aligning with who we aspire to be, which is manifesto driven? And that worked really well for us. It allowed us to kind of go off the rails a little bit, but those ended up being really good rails.
Guys, I want to come back. I'm thinking qualitative versus quantitative and coming back to self-advocacy. So is it data? Is it quant or is it is it other thing? Is it feelings? What I want to hear from both of you weigh in. So what does the advocacy look like? Do the burn down charts speak for themselves? Is that the thing that resonates? Oh, we increased velocity by 3 points last week. Richard, high five. Or is there something else? I think I know, but I want to hear both of you talk about what would be your recommendations, because advocate with what? What does the advocacy look like? Is it data? Is it something else? Is it storytelling? What? Richard, why don't you go first? Because Josh has been, it really bums me out. He's been dominating the conversation.
So for me, I'm more on a feeling side of the wall, right? So if you look at the Myers-Briggs side, that's kind of where I fall. So for me, it's a lot that has to do with the feelings. When things are going right, we know it, we feel it. I don't need data to tell me that. right? My teams are delivering, we're crushing it, right? Teams are happy. A lot of work to do, but we're not killing the team, right? So to me, is that. So metrics can show me everything that is there to show, but metrics can lie too. So I don't rely on that. So for me, it's, you would know it when you see it, when you feel it. And that's something that I don't even know how to put into context.
But I think that's a fair reply.
Yeah.
Josh.
The feeling told us because we lived it and we knew it and we had an aspiration of who we wanted to be. So we knew when we reached the destination, we knew we had won with the culture when we heard the squads self-correcting culture within themselves, and neither one of us said anything. We just saw it. And I can remember times where we just kind of looked at each other, raised our eyebrows like, oh, okay, cool, we did it. And that's great. But we still lived in a world where metrics were a thing. So that's and I don't like agile metrics at all. But many of us live in a world where you and I can see it and feel it, but someone upstream writing big checks often isn't like, oh, okay, that's good enough that you feel better. Like, no, it's not. Like, I'm not paying for you to feel better. I'm paying for us to, put money in and have money come out, and more coming out than we put in. So that's where understanding the value became a thing for us, and connecting the teams with the business as tightly as we did to help them understand the difference that they were making, which enabled us to do a better job with it. And we ended up, I think this came from Brian and Laura, of trying to get commercially minded engineers. And what that meant was that they were connected with the business and they understood how the thing they were building connected to marketing and sales and the end customer, and allowed more customers to feel confident giving us more money. So that was a thing that we had to do, and that's hard. And you can't fall into the trap of it feels good. Richard and I knew, but I still had this job or had to go tell the CEO and the Warburg Pincus board that, like, hey, this is working and here's why. And that wasn't easy. But over time, that feeling started to spread across the organization. So yes, the feeling matters, but you do have to fight those metrics at times.
You can back it up. So for me, when you say feel good, what do you mean by feeling good? Well, we're delivering on time, right? We're meeting customer demand, right? Those, to me, why we feel good is because of those things. And I think if you back it up, you can get the data from that, and it drives it. Meeting our commitments every 2 weeks, right? That's something, right? Having a roadmap, knowing where we're going. Again, customer minded, customer focused, commercialization of it is part of that, right? So to me, that's, at the end of the day, we feel good because of those things. I think if you were to break it down backwards, I think you'll get there with metrics. That's how I see it.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
I made a note, Josh, about commercially minded engineers, and maybe it's a future episode. We talk about commercially minded agile. I think there's something rich there in that mindset that not everyone has. So maybe there's a future exploration there. You and I can talk about it, guys. I think we're sort of nailing this. And I want to come back to advocacy. If there was an elevator pitch that I'm not trying to put either one of you on the spot, but what have we missed with the elevator pitch? Because it's so important. Coaches, agilists have to be advocates, because people don't understand our value in a lot of cases. Not everyone. So what's that elevator pitch? What do you got? Focus on this.
All right, I'm going to say it out there. For me, it is sharing your success story, telling your success story.
I emphasis, Richard, on not the teams. Can I get clarity? I mean, it's part teams, but the part that you played in it.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's
I love that.
Your team, your success. So Scrum Masters, if you're doing this, they're all success you've been doing. Sometimes you're in it so much you don't see it. You may need somebody else to stop you and say, hey, by the way, you are killing it. Here's why. So
I love that. Josh, he set the bar up high. I don't know. What do you got?
I feel like I should just bail because he nailed it so well. I'd be like, nice job, Richard. I can't top that.
That's fair enough. Can we stick a fork in it, Josh?
I
What do you
think so.
think?
Yeah. How are we going to do this?
We're going to do it that way. We're going to do it in 3 ways, and we're going to. All right. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
Who are you?
I'm Bob Galen.
Yeah.
And
I'm Richard Khor.
From where? Where are you?
From Cary.
Okay, another Cary. All right, and then from beautiful Fuquay Arena, the outsider here. I'm Josh Anderson.
Everyone, shake
and bake.
Take care, y'all.
All right. Thank you, Richard. You're the man.
All right. Thank you.
Richard, that was both of you. That was a nice story.
I did talk too much.
It just amazed me. I've never heard so many words come out of a human being in my life.
I talk too much. I'm sad.
No, we got some great comments. Did you see the Black Paladin came in?
Yeah.
The Sika Fisher came in. Steven had to leave early. Some good feedback.
Yep.
I think it resonated. Richard, thank you.
Yes.
It was wonderful seeing you again.
Yeah, it's just a great time for me to experiment with this, and I'm not happy with the video quality. So
that's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean,
I wish I had your video quality because I would look younger and more handsome. So I need to work on downgrading my video.
That sounds
Take
good.
care, guys.
All right, we'll see you.
Good seeing you. Bye, everyone.
How do you leave this? Oh, there you go.
You can just close the browser.
Oh.